Alright, so today we're going to be a little bit all over the place. There are a lot of unfinished projects around the boat, and I finally got the chance to deal with some of them. Now, in the last video I installed the diesel heater, and I mentioned in the video that I would like to upgrade from those soft fuel lines to a higher quality hard nylon line. So that's what I did, and I also took the chance and flipped the fuel filter around that I accidentally installed upside down the last time. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to upgrade those lines is, according to the internet, they degrade much faster than the hard nylon lines. So when I drained the diesel out of them, I noticed a weird color. Just take a look at those pictures. In the first picture here, we have diesel in a syringe coming straight from the jerry can. And in the second picture here, we have the exact same diesel coming from the same jerry can. The only difference is it was sitting for a couple of weeks in those fuel lines. Now, the fact that the diesel took on the color of those fuel lines does not make me feel comfortable in this material, and I really don't think this is the right stuff for the job. So I'm really glad I upgraded that, and I will put a link in the video description for the kit that I used here. Now, it has been already over a year ago that I installed this pocket door, and since then I feel like I have a giant rock hovering above me, ready to crush on me anytime. You see, the thing is, in order to install and to adjust the door, you need a super flat wrench that fits in this tiny space up here. And since no one has a wrench like that in their toolbox, it comes equipped with the installation kit. Well, I lost it a long time ago in my endless mess, and I literally had nightmares thinking that something goes wrong with the door and now I have to rip apart the entire wall just to fix it. Long story short, I recently found this wrench again, so I installed a magnet up here in the wall. And this wrench now is going to live a permanent life right there, so I never can be lost again. One of my biggest enemies in a boat is going to be condensation, so I decided to add a vent under each seat where I have a big storage compartment. Now that way I don't trap moist and cold air in there, and everything will be well ventilated. Next, I needed to work on closing up the raised floor with all the water tanks and pumps underneath, while making sure that everything is still accessible. Alright, so here's a quick explanation. I have two doors down here now, and both of them will give me access to the water pumps and the majority of the plumbing. Now, because the drop from the raised floor to the main floor was too steep, I decided to build a step. That step as of right now is just raw plywood on top, but it will receive the same flooring as the rest of the boat in the future. Now, on purpose I left two big openings underneath the step because I thought it would be a good spot to store a pair of shoes. Now, I installed the step with a long piano hinge that allows me to flip it up, lock it in position with a door lock that is hidden underneath, and that will give me access to the second door and to the bilge pump. I had to cut out a little opening in the floor through the plywood and the insulation to create a low spot for the bilge pump, and even though it's so teeny tiny, it still can move almost 50 liters per 60 seconds, so that's quite impressive. Now, hopefully this will never be in use. I'm not really worried about bilge water anyways, and I talked about that in length in part 5 of this build. But it's a good thing to have just for emergencies. You just never know. So there are a lot of things happening off camera that usually are not worth filming. For example, I finally hooked up the sink here and I installed a HEPA sanitary waste valve right there. And from what I hear from other people, they work really well. So all of that plumbing is done. And as you can see back here, I installed the hose for the gray water tank. So some of you guys were wondering how I'm going to empty the gray water tank. Now let me get into this real quick. So back here we have the gray water tank, and on its lowest spot we have some plumbing coming out towards the gray water pump, which is isolated by 2 valves. Now those pumps are also called macerator pumps because they have rotating blades that can grind up any solids like kitchen waste, for example. Now from the pump it goes up and out to this setup here. What we got here is a little hatch that is actually meant for electric cables, so I had to modify it a little bit by adding a piece of plywood as a back panel, and then I poured in about 1/8 of an inch of epoxy just to completely seal it up. And I used white pigments from West System to match the color. Now once it was cured, I could install the fittings. Okay, so if I want to empty the gray water tank, I would have to make sure those valves are open, and then I would come out here and hook up a garden hose to this fitting. Now it would be super uncomfortable to climb all the way back in there just to flip a switch to turn on the pump. Besides that, if I would do that, the garden hose out here would start a wild dance on its own because I reduced the hose diameter from 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch, and that would increase the pressure. Also, you never should run those pumps dry, which would happen by the time I climbed back in to turn it off again. So the solution was quite simple. I installed a remote switch. Now those things fairly cheap. They go for $25 on Amazon. They come with 2 remotes. I just keep one permanently in here. And they really make the job easy. You hook up your garden hose, walk it over to wherever you're going to dump your gray water, click the button, turn on the pump, wait till there's no more pressure, turn it off again, and you're done. So I hope that answers the question on how I'm going to empty the gray water tank. When I built the corner of this kitchen, I created the storage space with the long rounded door on the left and the tamper door to the right. In here we have a lot of plumbing and wiring going on, and I will need access to that in the future, but the majority of the space is really useless as of right now, so that has to change. Alright, so this is how it looks like. I'm super happy with it, and now you can see what the purpose of those magnets was. We really like to drink tea, so we have a ton of those metal containers, and the magnets keep them securely in place. For better access, this whole section can rotate out, and at the same time it allows me to work on the water lines behind it if I have to. I also left the bottom part here open for similar reasons. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned, and I will see you the next time.